So I guess I'll ask you, what percentage of electricity do you see as a reasonable target for nuclear energy, and what further policy steps would Congress need to take? And then for you, what percent from renewables and what policy steps would be needed? So.
First off, clearly if France can produce 80% of its electricity from nuclear power, so can the United States. But that isn't a reasonable first goal. The first goal should be to double the number of nuclear reactors in the United States to get the nuclear portion up to about 40%, and then think about doubling it again. It seems to me a very important fact when talking about public backing of nuclear and loan guarantees, etc., to remember that the United States is virtually unique in the world in expecting private capital to build electricity generating technology. In France and Canada, my country, and in Britain and in Russia and in Indonesia and in Japan and everywhere else in the world, the government builds these things. They are state-owned corporations in almost every case. And so the taxpayer is taking 100% of the risk. It does not seem unreasonable in the United States, therefore, for the taxpayer to take a piece of the risk. After all, they're the ones that are going to end up using the electricity. The risk needs to be shared among Wall Street, the utilities, and the public if we're going to have solid backing and financing for this very expensive venture of building new nuclear plants. But remember, in other countries, the taxpayer isn't sharing the risk, they're taking 100% of it.
Well, I don't think that we should be like France with 85% of the utility owned by the government and 85% of the reprocessing owned by the government and polluting the oceans with impunity while wastes are piling up and nobody wants them in their backyard. I think that private investment regulated properly is a sensible way for electricity. That's probably why electricity is cheaper in this country than it is in France. To the good of this country, it is. I have the numbers right here. If you want, I'll give them to you. I have said that we need to set a target for 100% renewable energy by the middle of this century. We have a carbon-free, nuclear-free alliance that we have formed that's promoting this goal. And we are confident that we will get there. 200,000 copies of my book have been downloaded in the last year. It's out there. I know people like the CEO of Jim Rogers have seen it. I have invited Jim Rogers publicly to sit down with me if he has any problem with my book. I am a technical person. As I've said, I've worked with utilities. I think that we can accomplish the goal of efficient energy systems and 100% renewable by the middle of this century. And I don't think we need to build any new nuclear power plants. In fact, I think it'll be a wrong thing to do. And nuclear power cannot help us overcome the central part of the CO2 crisis, which needs to be addressed in the next 10, 15 years. Renewables can do that, especially if we put efficiency first and coordinate renewables with that. Thank you.
I would just like to ask Dr. Makhijani, do you not accept and recognize the fact that nuclear energy today, never mind these wild predictions of the future, which we can't, it's no use debating about predictions really, because you don't know whether, I can't prove that what's going to happen in 2050, but I can prove that right today, over 70% of the clean electricity in the United States, that is the non-carbon emitting electricity, is nuclear electricity, and less than 5% is all the little things put together, like the wind and the solar and the geothermal. So is that not the case today?
Well, I'm one of the few environmentalists actually battled the environmental community, having them recognize that nuclear is not a zero CO2, because everything we do has a CO2 imprint so long as we have coal in the system, but a low CO2 system, just like wind and solar. And I really would like to correct you. You are listening to some generic environmentalist and not to me. When I said 7,500 megawatts of wind, I did my math and I said it's equivalent to 2.5 nuclear power plants. I already divided by 3. So you weren't listening to me, but saying you have to divide by 3 because you brought some generic environmentalist. I'm an engineer first, and I speak in that capacity, that I am advocating a reliable and more secure electricity system than the one we have today, which is proliferation prone. And the French one is more proliferation prone than the one we have.